Greetings, book lovers, and welcome to Author-ized. Today's guest is Nancy Starr. Nancy has 5 novels to her credit: Carpool Diem, Up Next, Now This, Buried Lives, and her most recent novel, Sisters 1, 2, 3. She's also written for the New York Times, Family Circle, Diversion Magazine, and a number of different places on the web. Nancy had a career as a movie executive for more than a decade before beginning her writing career. Welcome, Nancy.
Thanks for having me.
Sure, thank you very much for coming.
Really happy to be here.
Okay, let's kick it off with a few reviews. Okay, Publishers Weekly calls Sisters 1, 2, 3 delightful, heart-wrenching, and honest. This book is a lovely examination of memory, the past, and how, despite flaws, the strength of family ties remains throughout years of tumult and misunderstanding. Vanity Fair calls it unnerving. Midwest Review says, a consistently compelling and entertaining read from cover to cover, Sisters 1, 2, 3 clearly showcases author Nancy Starr's genuine flair for deftly created characters and original storytelling. From Booklist, an emotionally gripping portrait of a family's secrets and confessions. Starr brings all the members of the Tangle clan to life. These are multifaceted, complex characters with remarkable depth and nuance. Readers will enjoy seeing the childhood quirks resurface in the Tangle adults, and fans of Jamie Brenner and Elizabeth Kelly will adore this compelling, multi-generational story. So, we're going to get to Sisters 1, 2, 3 eventually, but let's talk about your previous life as a movie executive working in New York and London. What can you tell me about that?
Well, it was a great job, except that I always wanted to be a writer. So I had this really great job, which was not the job I wanted. So that, it's too bad that I didn't want that job, is all I have to say. I worked, as you said, for 10 years, and I had a lot of different parts of the job. One part was really just intelligence gathering. So my job was to find out every book, play, independently made film, or short story, Village Voice article that was coming up in the next year or so that might be something to be made into a movie, to meet with writers who might have ideas for movies, playwrights who might want to move into screenwriting, and then I also got involved with working for Sam Goldwyn Jr. for movies that were looking for distributors and for movies that were in production. So kind of sounds great, and it was great, except I think I've said this to a couple of people, my sympathy was always with the writer. Mm-hmm. And in Hollywood, that is kind of like, that just doesn't get you anywhere. The writer is a set of hands there to kind of make everybody else's wishes come true, unless you get to like the very peak of the writer food chain. And I just was completely only sympathetic with the writer's vision. And when I had to go in and tell a writer to make changes, if the writer had an idea of why that was wrong, I agreed with the writer immediately, so that wasn't so good. But I'm glad I did it. I met great people. I learned so much about stories, and it was hard to leave because I knew that it was a great job.
Okay, great. Let's talk about the Mae Morrison mysteries.
Yep.
So Mae Morrison is the protagonist of Up Next and Now This.
Right.
How did your experience in the film industry inform her character? She's a TV producer, correct?
Yeah. Yes. She's a TV producer, and here's the thing about that book and this is kind of happens a lot, a book, you go down one path to write a book and something happens and you end up in another path. So I started out writing a novel about a woman who had this job as a producer on a talk show who had a brother who was schizophrenic and missing. And it was I was writing this novel about these 2 different lives. She was having this very kind of exciting, glamorous life, and then she had this sick sibling, and I was just in the beginning of writing that book. And there is a book that you did not mention, which is fine, which was my first book that I published when I was still working for Sam Goldwyn Jr., called The International Book of Tipping. Okay. And I really don't want to date myself too terribly, but this was pre-wonderful Google, and I was doing a lot of traveling, and I never knew what to tip people when I was abroad. And I had a friend in publishing, and I said, you have to publish a book for me. I don't know what to tip the hall porter in the hotel in London. I now finally know what a hall porter is. Will I offend him if I tip him? And she thought it was a great idea and proposed it at her publishing company. And she called me up and she said, they want to do it, but they have no one to write it. Will you write it? So while I was working in the movie business, I got up at 5 o'clock every morning and I wrote this questionnaire, which I sent all around the world. And I ended up writing this book about how to tip in 35 countries around the world. So how does that connect? You're probably wondering with my mystery series. So pretty much 4 years later, after that book came out, I'm back to knowing nothing about tipping, which I started out knowing nothing, and I continue to this day to know nothing. But there is that source book and now Google. Anyway, I had an au pair. I had little kids, and I was writing this novel about this talk show producer. And my au pair from Finland told me that someone called from the opera, and while I was out getting the kids at the bus, and I really don't know what she was talking about. But later that day, someone called whose name from Oprah. And it was a call from Oprah's producer saying, we want you to come on to be our guest on our tipping show. And I was kind of like flabbergasted. And also I knew nothing about tipping at this point. And I spent this day on the phone with 4 producers, each one telling me another piece of what was going to happen. I was going to Chicago the next week. And in the beginning, I thought, I can't do this. I know nothing about tipping. And, 5 hours later, I'm like, what will I wear? I called my mother. I told all my friends I'm going on Oprah. This is crazy, but what will I say? And between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., I was going on Oprah. And at 6 p.m., the original producer, I had been talking to 4 producers, called back and said, we had approached someone before we called you who was unavailable. Now she's available, so I'm sorry.
Oh, boy.
We're canceling your appearance. And I was so even more flabbergasted that my life had been in this one course of a day. I was going on Oprah of all things. And now I wasn't going on Oprah. And I was really kind of mad.
I'm sure.
And so here I had been writing this novel about a talk show producer. And I just decided I'm changing this whole thing. And I have a talk show producer. And producers are going to start dying all around New York City. Talk show producers are just going to be dropping dead and nobody knows why. And my producer is going to solve the crime. And that is really how that book came about. So that's the long story.
Nice. Interesting, though. Yeah, I think I would be pretty angry myself.
Anyway, so let's go back, come closer to the present, to Sisters 1, 2, 3. What can I tell you?
Okay. Also, let's see, you have 2 daughters who are grown now?
I do.
Would it be accurate to say that some of May's work-life balance issues or concerns are a direct reflection of concerns that you had at that time?
I said probably that I would say, while I wasn't writing about myself in any way, I was using the movie business background, and I was, writing as a mother of young kids, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I see that definitely also in Annie from Carpool Diem. That's definitely present there.
Yes, so they're, by then the children are older, and now I'm standing at the soccer sidelines wondering, why are all these parents acting this way, myself included? And that kind of was the spark for that book.
Okay, let's talk about Sisters 1, 2, 3. To me, this book is kind of about Ginger, really about Ginger Tangle, her life today and her life as a child.
Right.
I would say that there's an event in her childhood which much of the story centers around and really informs her dominant personality trait, meaning she's very cautious, she's very careful, and some might say paranoid. The family's reaction to this event has kind of promoted a propensity towards secrecy, and I don't know. Can you just speak to how you feel about those things and about?
Well, yeah, I will share with you. I got an email the other day through my website from somebody who wrote to me and said, Ginger Tangle is the main character of the book, in my opinion as well. But the other very strong character, in addition to this as siblings, is her mother, Glory Tangle, who is quite a colorful and hard to get to know character, but though we do get to know her. And I got a letter from a man who said, I think Glory is my mother. Do you know me? Do you know my mother? You have captured exactly my mother. And we had some secrets in our family that as soon as they happened, we were told never to speak of them. So I think this happened in a lot of families. There's part of the book takes place in 1972, and there's very much of a sense of what it was like to be a child and a parent in that time, where kids were kind of running loose. You didn't, there were no helicopter parents.
Right.
There were parents who were doing their own thing and kids who were doing their own thing. And I don't know if it's changed now from then for everyone, but certainly I know when I was growing up, there was a accident on our street where a child had perished. There were no car seats yet, or they weren't mandatory. There were no seat belts, and a toddler perished. And no one talked about it. It was the weirdest thing. I don't remember anybody saying to me, don't say anything. But it was like that child vanished, and we were never allowed to say anything about it. I don't know how that mother got through her day. Yeah. But it took me such a long time to remember that. But that's how these stories come to life for me. There are little bits and pieces that remain tucked away for really long periods of time, but I'm thinking about them in the back of my mind, and then they somehow eventually all come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this this caution, this secrecy, eventually has an effect on Ginger's relationship with her own daughter Julia.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Yes. So I mean, it's not giving anything away because it's in the prologue of the book that the reader and Julia, Ginger's daughter, discover the secret so Julia's 17 and she's with her parents on a college tour weekend and little getaway. And so at 17 years old, and she accidentally overhears a family secret. And, this happens all the time. After I wrote the book, I had so many people tell me about the secrets in their families. Apparently, hidden first marriage is a big one. So many people found out as adults that their mother or father had been married again, that a person who they thought was a friend turns out to be a relative. And I think oftentimes in this novel and in life, people hide things to protect children. But then when is the right time to finally tell them? Because if you're already 10 years old and you've never heard about something, is now the right time? Or is it when you're 13? What is the magical moment? And so sometimes parents wait too long. And then what started out to be a secret that you can understand why you wouldn't tell a child something really difficult, now it feels like a lie. And that's what happens in the novel with Ginger and her daughter Julia. And Ginger's mother she was a prevaricator. She made up all kinds of stories as a way of life. And so that was one of Ginger's commitments to her, promises to herself when she had a child, that she would not be that mother. And then she just accidentally finds that she's done the same thing. And so her book, the book is partly Ginger and her daughter, who's not around for much of the book, but it's about them coming to terms with each other and coming back together. The ending does not tie everything up exactly neatly, but I won't say more than that.
Okay. Do you want to say anything more about that book in general?
There's a lot to think about. So it's about family secrets. One of my adult daughters told me that she feels like it's about letting go, and there's a lot of that too. So Ginger's mother, Glory, holds on to everyone really tight because she doesn't want to let anybody go, and maybe Ginger lets go too soon. This is the question, or vice versa. What's the right amount of holding on, and how, as a parent, do you finally let go of your children?
Okay. Do you have any favorite fictional characters? Do you have a favorite fictional character ever from any work of fiction?
I'm a very loyal person, but I'm not loyal to any character in fiction. I tend to connect really deeply with the book that I'm reading if I'm loving it, and relate really strongly to those characters. But the first thing that comes to mind, I've just finished an Elizabeth Strout, her novel Anything is Possible. So I guess Olive Kitteridge is, in the more recent world, one of my favorite characters. I love the mother in Portnoy's Complaint. Will never forget that mother. So there's some linger, but I don't have that one character.
Okay. Do you have a favorite book?
I have so many favorite books. So let's see. I just finished Anything is Possible, and I love that book. And I loved Anne Patchett's Commonwealth. I love that so much. And I've just started my friend Laura Shannon's book, Dogs of Avalon, which is about rescuing animals, and I love it. So I love a lot of books. I love the last book I read of John Irving. I love, and I just read a Julian Barnes book, and I love him. So I have a lot of love going out to books.
All right. Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Yes, that would be right. I say that and I laugh, but it's really, it's the only advice I think that counts. We all can waste time worrying about if our ideas are good enough, or if what's on the page is good enough, or when the time will be perfect to start writing. But you write by writing, and however many minutes or hours in a day, however many days in a row that you can do it is all that I can say, as well as reading. And every writer I know is a voracious reader. And, we read all kinds of books, myself included, trying to read first. I read first as a reader, and if it's a book I love, I usually read it twice. First as a reader, second as a writer, to try to figure out, like The Wizard of Oz, like, how did they do that? How did that writer make me cry? I'm so curious. But so those are the things. Write every day. Don't worry so much if it's good at first, and read as much as you can.
Sure. And are you reading anything right now? Is there anything on your bedside table at the moment?
Well, I have this new bad habit of reading 2 books at once. So I just finished that Elizabeth Strout book, and I just finished also the Julian Barnes book. So I'm kind of in a moment of not knowing what to read next. But I am on my list of to-do is to go get the new Tom Perrotta novel. Okay. I think I might read that next, which is ignoring about 200 books in my home that I have, in my head I'm reading next. And then I don't know. It's hard to keep up. I don't know how you do it.
Do you have a project in the works right now? Are you writing something at the moment?
Yes, I am partway through a first draft of my next novel, getting toward the end of a first draft. So I'm really excited about it. I can't talk about it because then it will turn into mush in my brain. Okay. So I have to really wait to talk about a book till I know what it's about. And it takes me an amazing amount of time to really know deeply what a book's about. I might know what the plot is. I mean, I do, but what the deep themes are, that takes a little more time to work out.
Okay. All right.
In the works.
Where do you write? Do you have a particular place in your home or?
Yes. I really do need to be apart. I know a lot of people who write in coffee shops, but I'm not one of them. So I live in New Jersey, and I have have an old house with a top floor. On the 3rd floor, there is an office. That's my office, with a door that I can close, and with headphones. If there's a lot of people around, 2 floors down that I can hear, then I use my headphones. And I also spend a lot of time in Martha's Vineyard, and the book Sisters 1, 2, 3 reflects that. It takes place both in New Jersey and in Martha's Vineyard. And there I have a wonderful former garage / shed.
Okay.
And that's a really great, beautiful writing space. I love to be there and write.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like our viewers to know about you, Nancy?
No, just, all I would add to that is that as I am the same way as a writer as I am as a reader, which is that I'm, my writing is a way for me to connect to readers. And as a reader, I'm really connecting with the writer of the story. And I do feel like readers take possession of the story after the writer finishes. And that as a reader, to me, there's nothing more satisfying than reading something that a writer writes who I don't know, who seems to be in my head and have felt exactly how I felt about something, but said it in a way I've never thought about it. And when I get letters from readers that tell the same thing to me, that's the highest compliment I can get. So I would encourage readers to always don't be shy about letting a writer know what you think. Writers really love to hear from readers. I know I do.
Great. Now we're going to do what we call a Buckles one-liner. We ask our author to pick a page or a passage from one of their books and read it and tell us a little bit about what's happening in that part of the story.
Okay. So I picked a part of the story set in the present day, and it's not really the present day because each year the present day year changes. So maybe mid to late 2000s, okay. 2005-ish, where Ginger Tangle, the main character of the book, is in her early 40s, and she works as an elementary school nurse. We also will meet Ginger as a 13-year-old that summer that you refer to where this catastrophe happens for the family. That's 1972. But I'm going to read to you a part from the present-ish day, and it's from chapter 12, kind of the middle of the book. And you mentioned that Ginger is a bit of a worrier, and that is her defining characteristic. And one of the questions that the book explores is, whether she would have still been as much a worrier if this accident hadn't occurred in her family, because there's lots of other things going on in her family anyway. So here's a little bit about Ginger and her day at work. As always, Ginger dealt with the waiting children quickly, listening to their woes with practiced sympathy, but not indulgence, and then briskly pointing them back to their classrooms. When the first wave was dispatched, she began her morning calls. This is Ginger Tangle calling to let you know Lila left her bear on the bus. This is Nurse Tangle reminding you to drop off a new EpiPen for Colin. This is Nurse Tangle calling to discuss what happened at recess with Luke. By 9 o'clock, the thermometer came out. The otoscope emerged around 10. At 11, the boy who was always constipated turned up, and right after him came the girl who pulled off a hangnail every day at lunch and made herself bleed. When the boy with the smelly feet showed up, she would talk to him about the weather. He liked to discuss clouds. Cumulus were his favorite, while she sprinkled powder in his socks and then sent him on his way. Throughout the day, they'd come in clumps. The chronic complainers who had imperceptible styes or tender spots their gym teachers denied existed. The upset stomachs, the sore throats, the itchy heads. There were mundane tasks, too. The students who came to get their eyes checked or to be weighed. But her specialty was the children with vague complaints. Not the children who lost things, but the children who themselves felt lost. So that's a little taste of Ginger Tangle trying to do good by children who are lost.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for speaking with us today.
Thanks.
To learn more about Nancy, you can visit her website. It's nancystarauthor.com. And be sure to run out to the bookstore or your library and buy or borrow her book, Sisters 1, 2, 3. Thanks again, Nancy, and thanks to all of you for joining us. Check back soon to hear more inspiring writers talk about their inspired books. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.